He'd forgotten the sound of laughter in his house. Only silence remained, and the crying of a child pleading for a mother who would never return. His hands, once strong, now only knew how to close doors. His heart, an empty fortress. Until one day, a woman with small-town eyes and hands that smelled of rosemary rang the doorbell. And when he came home unannounced, what he saw took his breath away. His son was walking toward the arms of that stranger. But that woman held a secret, a promise made years ago. A silver locket that would change everything, like this if it touched your soul. It's more than a click. It's a silent hug between those of us who have lost and keep going. Comment on how you think this story will end. And if you haven't subscribed yet, it costs you nothing, but it means a lot to us. Thank you for being here. The February light slanted in through the great windows of the Hamptons, La Moraleja, casting cold rectangles onto the white marble floor. Ethan Miller, Alejandro Cortez, walked barefoot down that endless hallway, holding a cup of coffee that had gone cold half an hour ago. It didn't matter. He hadn't tasted anything with true pleasure in months. He was 42 years old, but the purplish dark circles under his grey eyes added another decade. His 3-day beard was not a deliberate style, but simple neglect. The white shirt, wrinkled at the cuffs, hung over dress pants he'd worn the day before, and the day before that. Ethan Miller, a construction magnate, owner of an empire valued at $800 million, euros, couldn't remember the last time he'd slept more than 4 hours in a row. From the back room came a faint, almost resigned cry. Mateo, his son, 1 year and 2 months old, dark eyes like his mother, Eleanor, who was gone. Ethan clenched his fingers around the cup until his knuckles turned white. He took a deep breath and walked toward the nursery, that room that had been, decorated with so much love, and that now looked like a mausoleum of broken dreams. Teddy bears perfectly lined up on shelves that no one touched, a white rocking chair where Eleanor would never sit, light blue walls with hand-painted clouds by an artist who charged $3,000 and took a week. The baby was standing in the crib, clinging to the bars, his face red and wet. Seeing his father, he extended his arms. But there was something in that gesture that broke Ethan's heart. It wasn't joy, it was pleading. A plea from a child who had already learned that the world was a cold place. "It's okay, Ethan muttered as he picked him up with a clumsiness that embarrassed him. Matt didn't smile. He never smiled. He just clung to his father's neck with a disproportionate strength for his size, as if he feared falling into the void. And perhaps, Ethan thought bitterly, that was exactly how he felt, that they were falling together, with no net to catch them. His phone vibrated in his pants pocket. Unknown number. He ignored it. It vibrated again. Once, twice, 3 times. "What?" he finally answered, his voice short. "Mr. Miller, good morning. I'm Marta Suarez, from the Home Angels, Angeles del Hogar agency. I'm confirming that the new employee will arrive tomorrow at 9 in the morning." Ethan closed his eyes. The fifth in 6 months. "Have you checked all the references?" "Of course, sir. Lucy Stone, Lucia Santos, has 8 years. Of experience in childcare. Impeccable references, no history. She's a serious woman from a small town, very discreet." That's what they told me about the other 4. There was an uncomfortable silence on the other end of the line. "Mr. Miller, I understand your mistrust, but I assure you we have been extremely careful this time. Lucy comes recommended by trusted families. She has no social media. She has no—" "9 in the morning tomorrow," Ethan interrupted, "and tell her to bring her. Complete documentation, medical certificates included." He hung up without saying goodbye. Matt buried his face in his shoulder, and Ethan felt the dampness of tears against his neck. It hurt that he couldn't give him more. It hurt that he didn't know how. That night, after putting Matt to bed for the 3rd time, Ethan went down to his study and opened the bottom drawer of the solid oak desk that had belonged to his father. Inside, kept in a leather folder, was the last legacy of Don Robert Miller, Don Manuel Cortez, a letter written in a trembling hand, dated 3 weeks before his death. "Son, if you are reading this, it's because I am gone. I want you to know that what makes me proudest of you is not your successes, but your heart. Don't let pain turn you to stone. Life takes things away, but it also gives. Remain open. And always remember, help the Stone family, Santos, if they ever need it. True kindness crosses generations. Your father who loved you, Robert, Manuel, Ethan, folded the letter carefully and returned it to the drawer. Stone family. He vaguely remembered a woman named Ingrid, Inés, who had worked at the house in Miami, Sevilla, when he was a teenager. A woman with a kind face who always smelled of lemon and rosemary. His father treated her with a respect that Ethan at the time didn't quite understand. Now he understood. Now he understood many things. Too late. He poured himself a straight whiskey and stared at the lights of New York City, Madrid. Through the window, somewhere in that city, a woman named Lucy Stone was sleeping, and tomorrow she would cross the threshold of his house, and he, as he had done with all the others, would look for the error, the flaw, the crack that would prove she couldn't be trusted. Because trusting hurt. And Ethan Miller had no more room for pain. The doorbell rang at exactly 9 in the morning. Ethan, who had been awake since 6 monitoring the security cameras, watched the female figure on the monitor before opening. A woman, about 45 years old, medium build, brown hair pulled back in a simple braid. She wore a navy blue coat that was too big for her and carried a small, worn canvas suitcase. No designer bags, no excessive makeup, none of the calculated vanity he had seen in the others. He opened the door, maintaining a safe distance. "Lucy Stone." "Yes, sir." "Good morning." The voice was soft, with no trace of forced nervousness or the excessive confidence he so mistrusted. She had an accent from deep Arkansas, Extremadura, those broad vowels that spoke of dry lands and immense skies. Her eyes were brown, direct but not invasive. There were expression lines around her mouth, lines from smiling, not bitterness. "Come in," Ethan said, stepping aside. Lucy entered with small steps, not looking around too much, without the evident astonishment others had shown at the overwhelming luxury of that house. She didn't touch anything. She didn't make comments. She simply waited, hands clasped over her suitcase for Ethan to speak. The agency must have explained the rules. "Yes, sir. I'll repeat them anyway. No visitors are allowed. No photographs of the child are allowed under any circumstances. No use of social media is permitted inside this house. No sharing of information about this family with anyone. Understood?" "Understood. The salary is above market, but the demands are too. Matt is a difficult child. He doesn't sleep well. He cries a lot. He barely eats. He has rejected everyone who has tried to care for him." For the first time, Lucy showed something more than professional courtesy. Her eyes softened. "Children feel the pain around them, Mr. Miller. He's not difficult. He's sad." The sentence dropped like a stone in still water. Ethan felt something contract in his chest, but he kept his expression impassive. "Your room is on the 2nd floor, East Wing. It has a private bathroom. Matt's room is in the West Wing. I sleep on the ground floor. There's an intercom in every room. May I meet the boy?" Ethan nodded and led her down the marble hallway. His steps echoed, hard and dry. Lucy's were almost silent, as if she instinctively knew that house needed less noise, not more. Matt was in his playpen in the living room, surrounded by toys he didn't touch. He stared into space with those large eyes that seemed to hold too much awareness for a baby. When he saw his father, he made no gesture. When he saw Lucy, he didn't either. Lucy knelt down slowly next to the playpen without trying to touch him. "Hello, Matt. My name is Lucy. I'm going to be here with you for a while. Don't be afraid. Everything is going to be okay." The boy watched her with that unsettling seriousness. Lucy didn't look away, but she didn't force the connection either. She was simply there, still, present, as if she knew that sometimes the best way to approach is to not move at all. "He has his mother's eyes," Lucy murmured, so low that Ethan barely heard her. "How do you know that?" Lucy stood up and turned to him. There was something in her expression, a fleeting shadow that disappeared before Ethan could identify it. "It's a guess, sir. Children always look like someone." Ethan narrowed his eyes. Something didn't fit, but he didn't know what. "You start today. I'll show you where everything is, and remember, I am watching." "I know," Lucy responded, with a calmness that wasn't submission, but understanding. "Any father in your place would do the same." It was that answer, more than anything else, that made Ethan hesitate for the first time. She wasn't judging him. She wasn't challenging him. She simply understood him. And that, in some strange way, was more unsettling than anything else. During the first week, Ethan didn't let down his guard for a moment. He reviewed the camera recordings every night, analyzing Lucy's every move with the meticulousness of a detective, but he found nothing. Absolutely nothing suspicious. Lucy got up every day at 6:30. She showered in silence. She prepared breakfast for Matt with a deliberate slowness without rush, cutting the fruit into perfect pieces, heating the milk to the exact temperature. She didn't use her cell phone. She didn't turn on the television. She moved through the house as if it were a sacred space that deserved respect. With Matt, she was infinitely patient. When the boy cried, she didn't try to silence him immediately. She sat next to him and simply waited, murmuring soft words in that small-town accent that turned Spanish into a lullaby. "It will pass, my darling. It will pass. Cry all you need to." On the third day, Matt stopped crying when she entered the room. On the fifth day, he reached out his arms to her for the first time. Ethan saw it in the recording and felt a sharp pang in his chest that he didn't know whether was relief or jealousy. "How do you do it?" he asked one afternoon when he returned from work and found Matt asleep in Lucy's lap. She looked up from the book she was reading aloud, an illustrated storybook with pages worn from much use. "Do what, sir?" "Make him trust you. He didn't trust anyone." Lucy gently stroked the sleeping child's head. "Children don't trust perfection, Mr. Miller. They trust constancy. In knowing that you are going to be there, always the same, always calm, that gives them security." The others were there too. But they were in a hurry. They wanted quick results to prove they were good. Children feel that. They feel when someone is trying to prove something instead of simply being. Ethan was silent. Lucy was right, and that bothered him because he didn't know what to do with that truth. "My father used to say something similar," he finally said. "He said true kindness is not announced." Lucy smiled faintly but didn't respond. Ethan noticed she always did that. She listened more than she spoke. She didn't offer unsolicited opinions. She didn't try to create artificial intimacy with forced conversations. She did her job with a silent dignity that was more eloquent than 1,000 words. One night, while reviewing the cameras, Ethan saw her do something none of the others had done. Lucy was in the kitchen after putting Matt to bed, preparing tea. While the water was boiling, she approached the window and stood staring at the moon with an expression of deep melancholy. She touched something she wore under her blouse, a small bulge hanging from a chain. She closed her eyes, and her lips moved in what seemed like a silent prayer. Then she wiped her tears with the back of her hand, prepared her tea, and went up to her room without anything on her face, betraying that she had just been crying. Ethan turned off the monitor. For the first time in months, he felt something akin to shame. He was spying on another person's private pain, a person who clearly also carried her own wounds. The next morning, when he came down for breakfast, he found Lucy singing softly while preparing baby food. Matt, sitting in his high chair, was banging the tray with his hands and making a sound that took Ethan several seconds to recognize. His son was laughing. Weeks passed and the house began to change, not in its physical structure but in its atmosphere. The silences were no longer heavy but peaceful. Matt no longer cried at night. He began to babble syllables that Lucy celebrated as if they were poetry. Ethan still worked long days, but now he returned, home with something akin to expectation. He wanted to see what new progress Matt had made, what new expression Lucy wore, whether the house was still transforming into something that vaguely began to resemble a home. One March afternoon, he arrived 2 hours earlier than usual, a cancelled meeting. He left his briefcase at the entrance and walked toward the living room, expecting to find Lucy and Matt in their usual routine, but they weren't there. He heard voices in the back garden, that huge space with perfectly mowed lawn that no one had used since Eleanor died. He approached the window, and what he saw stopped him cold. Lucy had spread a blanket on the lawn. Matt was sitting on it, surrounded by flowers she had cut from the garden. Wildflowers, daisies, and lavender. Lucy was teaching him to touch them gently, guiding his chubby little hands over the petals. "Softly, Matt. Look how pretty. Your mommy loved flowers. Did you know? She's in heaven, but she can see you from there. And she's proud of you. Very proud." Ethan felt the air leave his lungs. No one had talked to Matt about Eleanor, not even him. He didn't know how. He couldn't find the words. But Lucy had found them, with a naturalness that hurt because it was so beautiful. Matt pointed to the sky with his little finger. "Mommy," he babbled, the first real word he had spoken. Lucy hugged him against her chest, and Ethan saw her shoulders tremble. She was crying too, with that silent crying that doesn't seek comfort. Ethan backed away without a sound and went up to his room. He sat on the edge of the bed and buried his face in his hands. For months he had tried to be strong, to be the perfect father, to keep everything under control. And he had failed. He had failed because he was so busy protecting his son from pain that he forgot to teach him about love. Lucy had done it in weeks, with flowers, with simple words, with an honesty he didn't have the courage to offer. That night, after dinner, in a comfortable silence while Matt played with wooden blocks in his playpen, Ethan dared to ask a question that had been circling his mind for days. "Lucy, do you have family?" She looked up from her plate, surprised by the personal question. "I did, sir. My mother passed away 2 years ago. My father when I was young. I'm sorry. Thank you. They were good people. They taught me what's important." "Did you never marry? Have children?" A shadow crossed Lucy's face. She took a moment to answer. "I was engaged once, a long time ago, but he died in an accident before the wedding. After that, I didn't want to try again. Some loves are unique, Mr. Miller, and that's okay. The children I care for become my family." Ethan nodded slowly. He understood that more than he wanted to admit. "Why do you work in this field? With your experience, you could have done many other things." Lucy smiled sadly. "Because children don't lie, sir. They don't judge your past, or your clothes, or your accent. They just want you to be there. It's the most honest work I know." That night, Ethan didn't check the cameras. April arrived with soft rains that washed the streets of New York City. Matt turned 1 year and 3 months old, and although he still didn't walk alone, he clung to furniture and took wobbly steps with help. Every achievement was celebrated by Lucy with a genuine joy that infected even Ethan. But there was something that continued to worry the magnate. Something subtle, almost imperceptible, but persistent like a background hum. Lucy knew too much about his family. Small details he had never mentioned, but that she hinted at in seemingly innocent comments. One afternoon, while Matt was napping, Ethan found Lucy in the study, looking at the bookshelf where he kept his father's books. She wasn't touching anything, just looking with an expression that mixed nostalgia and something deeper. "Do you like old books?" Ethan asked from the doorway. Lucy started slightly. "Pardon me, sir, I shouldn't be here. I was just—" "It's okay, you can come in whenever you want." She nodded but didn't move. Her eyes remained fixed on a particular volume, a first edition of Don Quixote that had belonged to Don Robert. "Your father was a cultured man," Lucy said softly. Ethan tensed. "How do you know anything about my father?" Lucy turned slightly pale. She had made a mistake and she knew it. The agency gives us basic information about the families. It's standard procedure." The agency didn't know anything about my father's literary tastes. The silence stretched between them like a crack. Lucy lowered her gaze. "You're right. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said anything." "What are you hiding?" "Nothing that can harm you or Matt, I promise you. Promises aren't enough for me. I've heard many promises." Lucy looked up, and in her eyes was a silent plea. "Mr. Miller, I know you have reasons to mistrust, but I ask you to trust a little longer." "When?" "The time is right. I will tell you everything, but not now, please." Ethan wanted to push, to demand immediate answers, but something in Lucy's quiet dignity stopped him. It wasn't the fear of someone hiding something dark. It was the weight of someone carrying a secret they didn't know how to share. "1 week," he finally said. "You have 1 week to explain how you know so much about my family, and if your answer doesn't convince me, you'll have to leave." Lucy nodded, her eyes moist. "Thank you, sir." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He reviewed every document the agency had provided about Lucy Stone, impeccable references from families in Atlanta and Memphis, Cáceres and Badajoz, clean criminal record, resume with stable, long-term jobs, nothing to raise suspicion, but nothing to explain that strange connection that seemed to exist between her and the Millers either. He opened the drawer where he kept his father's letter again. Help the Stone family if they ever need it. Was it possible? Was Lucy part of that family? Why hadn't she said so from the beginning? At 3 in the morning, He went down to the kitchen for water and heard a soft sound coming from the living room. With a racing heart, he walked barefoot down the hallway and peered in carefully. Lucy was sitting on the floor next to Matt's playpen, who had woken up crying. She hadn't taken him out. She had just put her hand through the bars and was holding the child's tiny hand. She was singing a lullaby in a very low voice, a melody that Ethan recognized immediately because it was the same one his mother used to sing to him when he was little. Sleep, my child, sleep, my love, sleep, my peace of heart. Duérmete, mi niño, duérmete, mi amor, duérmete, pedazo de mi corazón. How did she know that song? It was specific to Florida, to Miami specifically. It wasn't a popular song everyone knew. Lucy became aware of his presence and turned, with tears rolling freely down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't want to wake him, but I also didn't want him to feel alone." Ethan approached slowly and knelt beside her. Matt had already fallen back asleep, clinging to Lucy's finger. "That song, where did you learn it?" Lucy closed her eyes. "My mother taught it to me. She worked for 5 years in Miami in a very large house. The lady of the house taught it to her, and then my mother sang it to me." Ethan's heart was pounding. "In what house?" Lucy opened her eyes and looked directly at him. "In your family's house, Mr. Miller. My mother was named Ingrid Stone. She worked for Don Robert and Doña Clara Carmen for 5 years, until your father paid for a heart operation that saved her life and gave her enough money to return to Arkansas and open a small guest house." The revelation fell like a silent thunderclap. Ethan stood motionless, processing the information. "Why didn't you tell me from the start?" "Because I was afraid you would think I came for financial gain, that I wanted to take advantage of your father's kindness. I came because I needed work, Mr. Miller, but when I saw the ad and recognized the name, I felt it was a sign, an opportunity to give back something your family gave to mine." Ethan felt something break inside him, but it wasn't painful. It was liberating. "My father wrote a letter before he died. It said that if the Stone family ever needed help, I should give it. But you didn't come to ask for help. You came to give it." Lucy smiled through her tears. "That's what my mother taught me. True kindness asks for no reward." Over the following days, the atmosphere in the house subtly changed. Ethan no longer watched Lucy with mistrust, but with genuine curiosity. He wanted to know her, to understand how such a humble woman could carry so much dignity. One Sunday afternoon, while Matt was napping, Ethan invited Lucy to have coffee in the garden. She accepted with a certain shyness, as if crossing that line between employee and friend, family, was uncomfortable for her. "Tell me about your mother," Ethan requested, as he poured the coffee into porcelain cups that Eleanor had chosen and that hadn't been used since her death. Lucy smiled with that mixture of joy and melancholy that memories of the departed hold. "My mother was small but strong, widowed very young, with a child to support and a sick heart that no country doctor knew how to cure. When she got the job in Miami, I stayed with my aunt and uncle in Memphis. She came every 2 months, brought money and gifts and stories about that huge house where she worked. What did she say? That Don Robert treated her like a person, not a servant, that he asked about me, that he sent me books, that when he learned of her illness, he didn't fire her as other employers did. On the contrary, he paid for the best doctors, the operation, everything, and when she recovered, he told her she could stay or go back to her daughter, that he understood a mother needs to be with her children." Ethan vaguely remembered those years. He was 15, 16 years old. He was too busy with his own teenage affairs to pay attention to the household staff. "My father was a special man," he said, with a voice heavy with emotion. "Sometimes I think I inherited his business but not his heart." "That's not true," Lucy responded softly. "You are more like him than you think. It's just that pain has hardened you. But I see how you look at Matt. I see how much you love that boy. That's what matters. I'm not enough for him. I see it every day. He needs something I don't know how to give. He needs time, Mr. Miller. Time heals. Not everything, but a lot." They fell silent, drinking coffee as the afternoon sun painted the garden golden. It was Lucy who broke the silence, her voice barely audible. "There's something else I have to tell you. Something I've kept because I didn't know if it was the right thing to share." Ethan felt a shiver of premonition. "What is it?" Lucy took a deep breath, as if she were about to jump into the void. "Before working as a nanny, I was a nursing assistant. in Chicago, Barcelona, at the city hospital clinic. The world seemed to stop. Ethan knew that hospital. He knew that name. That's where Eleanor... Yes, Lucy's eyes were full of tears. I was there, on the night shift of December 24th, when your wife was brought in. Complicated labor, severe hemorrhage. I was one of the assistants in the operating room. Ethan couldn't breathe, he couldn't move. The world had narrowed to Lucy's voice and the pounding of his own heart. Eleanor was conscious before the anesthesia. She was very scared. She grabbed my hand with incredible strength. She told me she had a bad feeling, that if something happened to her, Lucy's voice broke. Ethan reached his hand across the table and took hers, an instinctive gesture of connection. What did she say? She said, "If I don't come back, please, take care of my son, please." I promised her everything would be fine. I lied to her without knowing I was lying. And when they came out of the operating room and told me she hadn't survived, I felt like I had failed my promise. Tears streamed down Lucy's face uncontrollably. For days I tried to find out about the baby, but the hospital wouldn't give me information. I was just an assistant. I had no right. I saw the last name Miller on the file, and it seemed familiar, but I wasn't sure. I didn't clearly remember the last name of the family where my mother worked, until I lost that job months later and started looking for work as a nanny, and I saw the ad. Miller, the Hamptons, a baby of a few months, and I knew it was a sign. That destiny was giving me the opportunity to fulfill that promise. Ethan's face was also wet with tears. All the pieces fit now. The ease with Matt, the knowledge about Eleanor, the dedication that went beyond professional duty. You were with her in her last conscious moments. Yes, and I want you to know that she didn't suffer, that she was full of love, that her last thought was for Matt, for you. She made me promise to care for her son, and here I am, not for money, not out of obligation, but because a promise made to a dying mother is sacred. Ethan got up from the chair and walked around the table. Lucy stood up too, uncertain, vulnerable, and then he did something he never imagined he would do. He hugged her, a deep, grateful hug, full of all the pain and relief that couldn't be contained in words. "Thank you," he whispered against her shoulder. "Thank you for being here. Thank you for keeping that promise. Thank you for giving my son back something I couldn't give him." Lucy was sobbing against his chest. "It's the least I could do, the least." When they separated, both were emotionally exhausted, but something had changed. They were no longer employer and employee. They were two people united by the love for a child and the memory of an extraordinary woman. "There's something I want to show you," Lucy said, reaching for her neck. She unbuttoned the top button of her blouse and pulled out a silver chain from which an old locket hung. She opened it carefully. Inside were two tiny photographs, one of her mother, Ingrid, and one of herself when she was young. But it wasn't the photograph that took Ethan's breath away. It was the locket itself, a silver oval with floral engravings, exactly the same as the three his father had commissioned a Miami jeweler to make. One for his mother, one for Eleanor as a wedding gift, and one, "My father gave that to your mother," he said with a trembling voice. "Yes," with a note that said, "For Ingrid, who takes care of this house as if it were her own and this family as if it were hers. With eternal gratitude, Robert Miller." Ethan reached out his hand, and Lucy placed the locket in his palm. It was identical, absolutely identical. The same weight, the same engravings, the same warmth of the old metal. "My father had these lockets made for the special people in his life, only 3 in his entire existence, and you wear one of them. I've worn it since my mother died. It's the most valuable thing I own. Not for the silver, but for what it represents: kindness, dignity, the certainty that there are good people in this world." Ethan carefully closed his fingers around the locket and then returned it to Lucy's hands. "Keep it, but know that you are now part of this family, not because of a locket, but by choice, by mine and by Matt's." Lucy nodded, unable to speak, and put the locket back under her blouse, against her heart. The following weeks were the most peaceful the Miller house had known since Eleanor's death. Matt was flourishing. By the end of April, he was standing alone, clinging to furniture, taking wobbly steps with the fierce determination of small children. Ethan began to change his work routine. He left earlier some afternoons. He cancelled less important meetings. He wanted to be present. He wanted to see his son's progress. And though he wouldn't admit it aloud, he wanted to be near Lucy, that calm presence that had brought peace to his shattered home. On May 10th, a Tuesday, Ethan had a crucial meeting scheduled with Japanese investors. He had been preparing for months, but mid-morning he received a message from his secretary. The investors had moved their flight up and wanted to reschedule for Thursday. The meeting was cancelled. Ethan looked at the clock, 11 in the morning. He could go home. He could surprise Matt. He couldn't remember the last time he'd been home at this hour on a workday. He drove through the streets of New York City with a strange sense of anticipation. When he arrived at the Hamptons and opened the door to his house, silence greeted him. Not the tense silence from before, but a comfortable one, full of possibilities. He left his briefcase at the entrance, took off his tie and walked barefoot down the marble hallway. Then he heard it. A giggle, high-pitched, crystalline, absolutely full of life. Matt's laughter. He stopped dead. It had been so long since he'd heard that laugh. He followed the sound to the living room and stood in the doorway, motionless, watching. Lucy was kneeling on the wooden floor, her arms outstretched. 3 feet away, Matt was standing, swaying, holding on to nothing. And then, as Ethan held his breath, his son lifted 1 foot. Then the other. 1 step, 2, 3 clumsy, uncertain but real steps. Very good, my darling. Come to me. Slowly. That's it, my love. Your mother would be so proud. Lucy's voice was pure emotion. And Matt, with bright eyes and a huge smile, was walking toward her. Truly walking. His first steps. Ethan felt the world stop. His son was walking, and he was watching it. And Eleanor wasn't. Matt stumbled into Lucy's arms and fell into her lap with a triumphant giggle. She hugged him, laughing and crying at the same time. You did it, precious. You walked all by yourself. You are so brave. Your daddy is going to be so happy when I tell him. It was then that it happened. When Matt moved in the embrace, something slipped from Lucy's neck. The locket. It fell onto the rug with a soft sound, opening on impact. The 2 photographs were exposed to the light. Ethan entered the living room. His steps, usually firm, sounded like thunder. Lucy looked up, startled, with Matt still in her arms. Mr. Miller, we weren't expecting. But Ethan wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the locket on the floor. He bent down, picked it up with trembling hands, and examined it with an intensity that made Lucy pale. Where did you get this? His voice was low, tense, loaded with contained emotion. Sir, I already explained. My mother. No, this specific locket. Where did you get it? Lucy stood up with Matt in her arms. The child, sensing the tension, stayed still. Don Robert gave it to my mother. I already told you. My father only commissioned 3 of these lockets in his lifetime. 3. 1 for my mother, who is buried with him. 1 for Eleanor, which she wore when she died, and which I now keep in a safe deposit box. And 1. He stopped, looking intently at Lucy. The 3rd one. My father told me before he died that he had given it to someone very special, someone who saved something more than his house. But he never told me who. Lucy had tears streaming down her cheeks. Ingrid Stone saved your father once, literally. Don Robert had a heart attack while alone at home. My mother found him, gave him CPR, called emergency services. The doctors said that without her, he wouldn't have survived. Don Robert gave her this locket, telling her it wasn't for the service she provided, but for the life she gave back, that they were family now, that my mother's kindness had given him more years with his son, with you. The impact of those words fell upon Ethan like a tidal wave. His father had never told him the details of that heart attack, only that an employee had saved him. He never knew it was Lucy's mother. Your family saved my father, and now you are saving my son. I am not saving anyone, Mr. Miller. I am just keeping a promise. 2 promises, actually. Ethan closed the locket carefully and returned it to Lucy. Then he did something completely unexpected. He knelt down in front of her, his head bowed. Forgive me. Lucy gently set Matt down in his playpen and knelt down too at his level. Why? Why are you asking for forgiveness? For mistrusting you. For watching you as if you were a criminal. For not seeing that you didn't come here for money or self-interest, but for something much purer. You came for love, to give back something my family gave to yours. You came to keep a promise made to a dying woman. You came because you are good, because your mother raised you well. And I treated you like a threat." Lucy took Ethan's hands in hers. "You are a father protecting his son. There is nothing to forgive. Any father would do the same, especially one who has suffered so much. But you deserve more than suspicion. You deserve trust. You deserve respect. You deserve—" His voice broke. Lucy hugged him, a simple but deep gesture. "What I deserve and what I have is enough. I have a roof over my head, a precious child to care for, and a father who is learning to love. Again, that is more than many have." They stayed that way, kneeling on the living room floor, while Matt watched them with that curious seriousness of children who sense that something important is happening. Finally, Ethan pulled back and wiped his tears without shame. "Matt walked," he said, and a smile broke out on his face. "My son walked." Lucy laughed too, wiping away her tears. 3 steps, the most beautiful I've ever seen." Ethan approached the playpen and picked up Matt, who hugged him with those little arms that now seemed stronger. "Your mommy would be proud," he whispered against his son's soft hair, "and I am too. So much." It was the day everything changed, not because of the steps, but because Ethan understood something fundamental. He had been so busy protecting that he forgot to trust. And by finally trusting Lucy, he recovered something more valuable than security. He recovered hope. That night, after putting Matt to bed with a lullaby Lucy had taught him, Ethan went down to his study. There was something he needed to do, something he had been putting off since his father's death. He opened the bottom drawer of his desk and took out the wooden box where he kept Don Roberts' personal papers. Inside, in addition to the letter he had already read, there were sealed envelopes. One of them had his father's trembling handwriting on it. "For Ethan. Open only when you have learned to trust again." With trembling hands, he broke the seal. Inside were 3 handwritten pages. He recognized the handwriting immediately. It was from his last months of life, when illness had already weakened his hands, but not his spirit. "My son, if you are reading this, it means you have found reasons to trust again. I am glad. Mistrust is a prison we build with our own fears. I want to tell you about Ingrid Stone because I sense that her family will re-enter your life somehow. Good deeds have echoes, son. They repeat over time like ripples in a pond. Ingrid didn't just save my life that afternoon. She saved me from something worse. She saved me from becoming a man who believes that money can buy everything. When I woke up in the hospital and saw her concerned face, I understood something fundamental. She hadn't saved me out of work obligation. She did it because for her all life has value. Rich or poor, boss or employee. That lesson was worth more than 1,000 books. I paid for her heart operation because it was the right thing to do. But she gave me much more in return. She restored my faith in humanity. She reminded me that true nobility does not come from the last name, but from the soul. If someone from her family ever knocks on your door, receive them with open arms. Because debts of gratitude are not measured in money. They are measured in generations. And our family owes hers more than any bank account could ever repay. I know you have suffered. I know Eleanor left too soon. I know you are afraid to lose again. But son, fear will make you lose the only thing that truly matters, the present. The opportunity to love now, to trust now, to live now. Don't let the pain of the past steal the present from you. Matt needs a father who smiles, not one who watches. He needs a home with laughter, not a fortress of suspicion. And you, my dear son, deserve to be happy again. With all my love, your father who always believed in you, Robert." Ethan finished reading, with his face wet with tears. His father's words resonated with a painful truth. He had been so busy watching, protecting, shielding himself against pain, that he forgot to live. He folded the letter carefully and went up the stairs. He stopped in front of Lucy's room. There was light under the door. He knocked gently. "Come in," she replied. Lucy was sitting on the bed, a book in her hands and reading glasses that Ethan had never seen her wear. She looked younger that way, more vulnerable. She quickly took off her glasses, as if she had been caught doing something intimate. "Mr. Miller, is something wrong? Is Matt okay?" "Matt is perfectly fine, but I need to talk to you." He invited her to come down to the living room. He made tea for both of them, a domestic gesture he had never made with any of the previous employees. They sat on the sofas with the soft light of the lamps creating an intimate atmosphere. I read something tonight, Ethan began. A letter my father wrote before he died. It spoke about your mother, about you, in a way, even if it didn't. Mention you directly. He handed her the letter. Lucy read it slowly, her eyes becoming increasingly moist. When she finished, she returned it with trembling hands. Don Robert was an extraordinary man. He was. And he was right in everything he wrote. About trust, about the present, about living instead of just surviving. Ethan took a deep breath. Lucy, I want to formally apologize. Not just for mistrusting you, but for treating you like an employee when you are much more than that. My father called you family in that letter, and he was right. You are family. Not because of our family's past, but because of what you have done for Matt, for what you have done for me. Mr. Miller, Ethan, call me Ethan, please. Lucy smiled shyly. Ethan, then. You don't need to apologize. I understand your reasons. But I need to do more than apologize. I need to make things right. Starting tomorrow, I want to change your contract, triple your salary, give you real days off, treat you as you deserve to be treated. Lucy shook her head softly. I don't need more money, I have enough. What I need is for Matt to be okay, for you to be okay. That is enough payment. My father would have said something like that too, Ethan murmured with a sad smile. That's why he gave them that locket, because true kindness doesn't seek reward. They sat in shared silence, drinking tea, letting the words settle. It was Lucy who finally spoke. May I ask you something personal? Anything you want. What was Eleanor like? As a person, I mean. I know what her death was like, but not what her life was like. Ethan felt the familiar pain, but this time, for the first time, he didn't push it away. He let it be. He explored it. She was light. That's the best way to describe her. Wherever she entered, everything became brighter. She laughed a lot. She sang in the shower. She hated ties and would loosen them every time I came home, saying I looked like a boring banker. She loved flowers, especially wildflowers. She said the perfect ones from the florist had no soul. Lucy smiled. That's why I planted daisies in the garden. Matt and I water them together. Ethan felt a wave of gratitude so intense that he had to close his eyes for a moment. Thank you for keeping her alive for him, for not letting Matt grow up in a house where his mother is only a painful silence. Eleanor deserves to be remembered with joy, not sadness, and Matt deserves to know the wonderful woman who gave him life. That night, Ethan slept 6 hours straight for the first time in over a year, and he dreamt not of nightmares, but of a garden full of wildflowers where a dark-haired woman laughed while a small child ran among the daisies. May turned into June. New York City filled with heat and tourists, but in the house in the Hamptons, summer brought changes deeper than the weather. Ethan kept his word. He rewrote Lucy's contract, not only tripling her salary, but including full health benefits, paid vacation, and a clause that officially named her the designated guardian of Matt in case of emergency. Lucy cried when she read it, not because of the money, but because of what it symbolized: absolute trust. But the most significant change was another. Ethan began to restructure his work life. He delegated more responsibilities. He hired a trusted chief operating officer. He reduced his office hours from 12 to 8, because every afternoon, at 6 o'clock sharp, he wanted to be home for dinner. Dinners became sacred rituals, the three of them together in the kitchen, not the formal dining room that looked like a museum. Lucy cooked simple dishes from Arkansas: grits, gumbo, stew. Ethan helped clumsily, learning to chop onions without crying too much. Matt, in his high chair, clapped and laughed, smearing pureed food on his face and being absolutely perfect in his chaos. One afternoon, while Matt was napping, Ethan found Lucy in the garden, kneeling next to the flowers she had planted. She had added more since then: lavender, rosemary, some wild roses. The garden, once perfectly geometric and cold, now had a beautiful disorder, as if nature had decided to express itself without restrictions. It reminds me of my mother's garden in Arkansas, Lucy said without turning around, knowing he was there. She used to say that perfect gardens are sad, that flowers need a little freedom to show their true beauty. Ethan knelt beside her, not caring that his $2,000 suit was stained with dirt. Eleanor said the same thing. She wanted to turn this garden into something wild. I refused. I wanted everything to be controlled, perfect. Now I see how foolish I was. You weren't foolish. You were just afraid that disorder would bring chaos. But control didn't bring peace, it only brought more control. They worked together in silence for an hour, planting more flowers, freeing the garden from its rigid geometry. Both their hands ended up dirty with soil, their fingernails black, and Ethan couldn't remember the last time he had felt so alive. "Lucy, I want to ask you something," he finally said, "and I want you to be completely honest." "I always am. Are you happy here?" She sat back on her heels, carefully considering the answer. "Yes, but not in the way you might imagine. I'm not happy because of the salary or the nice house. I'm happy because I feel like I'm where I should be, that I am fulfilling something important, that my life has purpose. And what if that purpose wasn't just a job? What if it was more?" Lucy looked at him with questioning eyes. "I don't understand." Ethan chose his words carefully. "I want you to be officially part of this family. Not as an employee, as Matt's aunt, as someone who has a voice in his decisions, in his education, in his life, as real family." Lucy's eyes widened in surprise. "Ethan, I don't know what to say." "Say yes. Say that you will stay not because I pay you, but because you want to stay. Because this is your home too." Tears rolled down Lucy's cheeks, mixing with sweat and dirt. "Yes, 1,000 times yes. There is no place in the world I would rather be." They hugged there, in the middle of the newly liberated garden, with dirty hands and clean hearts. That night, when Matt woke up from his nap and came down the stairs, he now came down alone, holding onto the railing, Ethan sat him on the sofa and spoke to him with that seriousness used with small children when something important is to be taught. "Matt, do you know who Lucy is?" The boy nodded energetically. "Lukey." It was his way of pronouncing the name. Ethan smiled. "Lucy is family now. She is your Aunt Lucy. Do you understand? Family. Like Daddy." "Auntie?" Matt asked, trying the word. "Yes, my love. Auntie Lucy." Matt got off the sofa and ran. He was running now, with that adorable clumsiness of a 1.5 years old, to where Lucy was preparing dinner. "Auntie Lukey!" he shouted, hugging her legs. Lucy picked him up and covered him with kisses. "Yes, my darling Auntie Lucy, forever." And in that moment, Ethan understood something fundamental. Family is not defined only by blood. It is defined by choice, by love, by promises kept even when no one is watching. July arrived with clear skies and an unexpected visit. Ethan was in his study reviewing contracts when the intercom rang. The entrance employee, they had hired more staff, easing Lucy's burden, announced, "There was a woman at the door asking for him, a certain Carolyn Baker, Carmen Ruiz." The name didn't sound familiar. He was about to say he didn't receive unscheduled visitors, but something in the employee's tone stopped him. "She says it's urgent, sir. She says she was at the hospital with your wife." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He ran down the stairs and opened the door himself. A woman in her 50s was there, with a kind face and tired eyes. She wore a nurse's uniform under a light jacket. "Mr. Miller." "Yes, who are you?" "My name is Carolyn Baker. I was the nursing supervisor at the city hospital the night your wife was admitted. I'm sorry to show up like this, unannounced, but I needed to talk to you. It's about one of my assistants from back then." Ethan felt the floor move beneath his feet. "Lucy Stone." Carolyn seemed surprised. "So you know she was there. Good. That makes things easier. May I come in?" He led her to the living room. Lucy was coming down at that moment with Matt by the hand. Seeing Carolyn, she stopped dead, all color drained from her face. "Carolyn, Don't worry, Lucy. I haven't come to cause trouble. I've come to clarify things." Ethan looked from one to the other, confused. "Do you know each other?" "She was my supervisor," Lucy explained in a trembling voice. She was the one who fired me." Carolyn nodded sadly. "And I've come to apologize for that." They all sat down in the living room. Matt, sensing the tension, snuggled into Lucy's lap. Carolyn took a deep breath before speaking. "Mr. Miller, that night was one of the worst of my career. We lost a young patient, a mother. Protocol dictated we maintain professional distance. But Lucy got emotionally involved. She cried with the family. She promised things she couldn't deliver. That violated the rules." "So you fired her for having a heart?" Ethan said, his voice tense. I fired her because I was afraid she would get emotionally burned out. Assistants who get too involved don't last in this job, they break. I thought I was doing her a favor. Carolyn turned to Lucy. But a few days ago, a colleague showed me an article in an economic magazine about Ethan Miller, construction magnate. In the photo was you in the background holding a child. I recognized you immediately, and I investigated, and I found out you were caring for the son of Eleanor Martinez, the woman from that night. Lucy had silent tears rolling down her cheeks. I kept my promise. I told Eleanor I would care for her son if she didn't return, and I am here, keeping that promise. Carolyn approached and took Lucy's hands in hers. Lucy, I was a fool. You weren't breaking by getting involved. You were becoming what we should all be, human, real, compassionate, and instead of valuing that, I punished it. I've come to ask for your forgiveness, and to tell you that if you ever want to work at the hospital again, you will have a letter of recommendation from me, the best I can write. Lucy shook her head. Thank you, Carolyn, but my place is here. This is my family now. Carolyn smiled with sadness and relief at the same time. I know. I saw it in your eyes when you came down the stairs with that child. That's why I came. Not to offer you a job, but to close a circle. To tell you that you did nothing wrong that night. You did everything right. And I was wrong not to see it. She left shortly after, leaving a contact card in case you ever change your mind, and a sense of closure in the air. When the door closed, Lucy sank onto the sofa, emotionally exhausted. Ethan sat next to her. Why didn't you ever tell me you were fired because of Eleanor? Because it wasn't Eleanor's fault. It was my decision to get involved, and I don't regret it. If I had to go back to that moment, I would do exactly the same thing. You lost your job for making a promise to my dying wife. I lost a job, but I gained a purpose. I gained this family. I gained Matt. If that's not a gain, I don't know what is. I don't know what is. Ethan hugged her, and Matt, caught between them, laughed with that pure joy of children who know they are exactly where they should be. August arrived with clear skies. One morning, as they ate breakfast together, Ethan made an announcement that surprised Lucy. I've been thinking about something. I want to organize a small ceremony, something intimate, to officially name you Matt's legal guardian. Lucy stopped her coffee cup halfway to her lips. Legal guardian? If something happened to me, I want Matt to stay with you. Not with distant relatives he barely knows. With you. With his Aunt Lucy. Ethan, that's too much. It's exactly what it should be. And there's something else. I want you to meet some important people to me that day. My inner circle. I want to introduce you not as the nanny, but as what you are. Family. The ceremony took place 2 weeks later at the house. Only close people were invited. The family lawyer, 2 trusted business partners of Ethan, and some close friends who had known Eleanor. Lucy wore a simple sky blue dress, the silver locket visible on her chest. She didn't hide it anymore. It was part of her story, part of who she was. When Ethan introduced Lucy, he didn't use euphemisms or circumlocutions. I present to you Lucy Stone, the woman who saved my father years ago through her mother, the woman who was with Eleanor in her last conscious moments, the woman who kept an impossible promise and brought life back to this house, and as of today, officially, my son's designated guardian and a member of this family. Those present applauded. Some had tears in their eyes. The lawyer handed over the signed documents. Lucy, with trembling hands, stamped her signature next to Ethan's. Matt, oblivious to the solemnity of the moment, ran among the guests shouting, "Auntie Lukey! Auntie Lukey!" with the overflowing joy of his almost 2 years. It was one of the partners, an older man named Antonio, who approached Lucy at the end of the afternoon. I knew Don Robert, he told her. He was my mentor. And I see in you the same kind of goodness he valued. Ethan was lucky to find you. I was lucky to be found, Lucy replied with genuine humility. That night, when everyone was gone and Matt was sleeping soundly, Ethan and Lucy sat in the garden under the stars. You know, Ethan said, my father would be proud of us, of how your story ended. Stories don't end, Lucy replied softly. They just transform into new stories. And she was right. December arrived, covering New York City with lights and promises. It would be Matt's first Christmas with true joy in the house. Ethan wanted it to be special. They decorated the tree together, all 3 of them, with Matt helping by tangling the lights and breaking 2 glass ornaments, which were met with laughter instead of scolding. Lucy cooked traditional Arkansas sweets, filling the house with aromas of cinnamon and honey. On Christmas Eve, Ethan brought down a box from the attic that he hadn't opened in 2 years. Inside were the decorations Eleanor had bought for Matt's first Christmas, that Christmas she never got to celebrate. "Are you sure?" Lucy asked softly. She would want them to be used, to bring joy, not sadness. Together, they took out ceramic figurines, a handcrafted nativity scene, socks embroidered with Matt's name. Lucy placed each piece with reverence, as if honoring a sacred legacy. That night, after putting Matt to bed, Ethan gave Lucy a gift wrapped in gold paper. "It's nothing big," he lied, because he had chosen it with meticulous care. Lucy opened the package and found a silver-embossed frame. Inside were 3 photographs, one of Ingrid Stone young and smiling, one of Eleanor with newborn Matt, and a recent one of Lucy with Matt in the garden. 3 generations of extraordinary women, Ethan said, united by something stronger than blood. "Love," Lucy cried, hugging the frame to her chest. "It's the most beautiful gift I've ever received. I'm not done yet." Ethan pulled out another envelope. "This is a deed to a house in Memphis, near where your mother was born. It's yours, so you have a place of your own, a refuge if you ever need it." "Ethan, I can't accept." "It's done. It's not charity, Lucy. It's justice. It's recognizing that you have given this family more than any money could ever pay." They hugged for a long time, while the lights of the tree flickered in the darkness. The following spring brought subtle but profound changes. Matt, now 2 years old, talked non-stop, an adorable mix of Spanish words with his father's New York accent and his Aunt Lucy's Arkansas expressions. One afternoon, while organizing papers in the study, Ethan found the last envelope in his father's box, one he hadn't seen before, hidden in a secret compartment. It was marked, "For when Ingrid or her family return." With trembling hands, he opened it. Inside was a notarized document and a brief letter. The document was a property transfer. Don Robert had bought years ago a small farm in Arkansas and put it in Ingrid Stone's name, but she never knew. The document included a note, "To be delivered to Ingrid or her heirs when appropriate. May it serve as eternal gratitude for the gift of more time with my son." Ethan read the attached letter. "Whoever reads this, make sure the Stone family knows they were never employees. They were angels in disguise, and angels deserve more than wages, they deserve legacies." That afternoon, Ethan took Lucy and Matt for a drive. He drove 3 hours to Arkansas, to a small town surrounded by olive groves. He stopped in front of a modest but beautiful farmhouse, with a wild garden full of flowers. "What are we doing here?" Lucy asked, confused. Ethan handed her the keys and the notarized document. "This was your mother's. My father gave it to her, but for some reason it never reached her hands. It's yours now, by right, by justice, by love." Lucy read the document with disbelief. "This can't be real. It is completely real. My father wanted your mother to have security, a place of her own, and now that place is yours." They walked through the farm. Matt ran among the olive trees laughing. Lucy touched the stone walls with reverence. "Your father and you have given me more than I deserve. We have given you exactly what you deserve, and even so it is less than you have given us." In the farm garden, Lucy knelt down next to a wild rose bush and cried all the tears she had held back for years. Tears for her mother, for Eleanor, for the promises kept, for the perfect circle life had drawn. Ethan knelt beside her, and Matt hugged both of them with those small arms that held all the love in the world. "We are family," Matt said in his clear little voice. "Right, Daddy? Right, Auntie?" "Yes, my love," they replied in unison. "We are family." 5 years later, the house in the Hamptons was no longer a silent fortress. It was a home full of life, laughter, and love. Matt, now 7 years old, helped his Aunt Lucy in the garden that had grown beautiful and wild, exactly as Eleanor would have wanted it. Ethan, grayer but infinitely happier, worked less and lived more. One autumn afternoon, while organizing papers in the attic, they found a box with old videos, recordings Eleanor had made during her pregnancy, messages for the son who was about to be born. The 3 of them sat down to watch them together. Eleanor, luminous and pregnant, spoke directly to the camera. Matt, my love, if you are watching this, it means you grew up. I hope you are happy. I hope your father taught you to be strong but also to be kind. I hope you have people who love you, not for what you have, but for who you are. And I hope you know that your mommy loved you from the first moment, that I will love you always, wherever I am. Matt, with tears in his eyes, looked at Lucy. Auntie, did you know my mommy? Yes, my darling. And she made me a promise that you helped me keep. Which one? She made me promise to take care of you. And I have. And I always will. Matt hugged Lucy tightly. I love you, Auntie. And I love you, my beautiful boy. Ethan watched them with moist eyes. He thought of his father, of the locket, of the promises that crossed generations. He thought of Ingrid saving Don Robert, of Don Robert saving Ingrid, of Eleanor making Lucy promise, of Lucy keeping that promise against all odds. He thought of the perfect circle of goodness. How what you give always comes back, perhaps not to you, but to yours. How true love doesn't die, it only transforms. That night, after putting Matt to bed, Ethan and Lucy sat in the garden as they had so many other times. The silver locket shone under the moonlight on Lucy's neck. You know, Ethan said, my father was right about everything. Kindness crosses generations. Promises made with the heart always find their way. And true family is not defined by blood, but by the choice to stay. Lucy smiled. And trust is not bought, it is earned. With patience, with time, with constant love. Thank you, Ethan said simply. For what? For coming back. For staying. For bringing life back to this house. For keeping a promise no one else would have remembered. For teaching me that control doesn't bring peace, but love does. Lucy took his hand. Thank you. For finally trusting. For opening your heart when it was easier to keep it closed. For choosing me as family. In the second-floor window, Matt watched them from his room, his teddy bear under his arm. He smiled. He knew with that certainty only children have that he was the luckiest boy in the world, because he had a daddy who loved him, an auntie who had crossed time to keep a promise, and a mommy in heaven who in some mysterious way had orchestrated everything from the beginning. The silver locket, silent witness to 2 generations of goodness, shone in the darkness like an earthly star, and somewhere in the universe, 3 souls smiled, Don Robert, Ingrid, and Eleanor, knowing that their legacy was complete. That true goodness never dies. It just waits for the perfect moment to flourish again.